images that we used last week, as well as the images for this afternoon. As Janelle said, they're working on getting the software for you all by later today. So as soon as it is organized, you will receive it. So we're going to follow the same procedure as the past two classes, where I will demonstrate, and obviously you will get the recordings to review, right? And you will have the images this time to practice, those of you who may have the software already, right? Those of you who don't, let's hold a little strain until you do receive the software, right? So we're going to start you all off this afternoon a little easier, right? Some simple things with the content-aware feature in the software, and then we're going to get into continuing creating pages using the tools and the filters and stuff like that, right? So we're going to go File, Open. Look on the desktop. Into my today folder. And I'll do this one first. Right, so with this image, I'm going to show you all the content-aware move feature, right? Or the move tool. And in order for us to do that, we're going to use a selection tool. So these 4 tools in this top area here are selection tools, but we're going to be using this lasso tool. So with the lasso tool, when you click and hold on your mouse, because once you see in this arrow to the bottom right-hand corner of a tool, it means you have other tools available in the cluster. You'll see the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool, right? But we're going to be using the lasso tool, and we're going to have it set to the new selection square, right? And we're just going to simply left-click and draw a line around the girl as close as possible. Go back to where we started and let go. And as soon as we let go, the part that we were drawing will turn into a selection, or the marching ants, as they call it. And then we're going to click here, where normally you would see the spot healing or the plaster, the spot healing tool. And again, I'm left clicking and keeping my finger pressed on the left mouse button to open up the other available tools. And I'm going to choose the content-aware move tool, right? So that's the 4th cluster of tools in the right column of the toolbar, right? And up at the top of the menu, I'm going to also have it in mode set to move, structure at 4, color at 0, and transform on drop checked. And I'm just simply going to left click within the selected area and move the girl off a little bit to the side, right? And then I'm going to hit the check mark up at the top of the menu to apply the transformation, because it is a transformation. There's a process. Right, and then selecting the menu and deselect. And as simple as that, you can move somebody within an image. Yes, we've seen some little discrepancies here in the field, but we could always use the clone stamp tool, which we learned last week, right? And hold on Alt, sample the look like field, and fill in this area. And you could also clean up this by holding down Alt, sampling the background of the sky, and covering it. Right, so we combine the content-aware move tool and the clone stamp tool, right? I'm not going to save this. Just going to exit off and say no to save any changes, right? Then I'm going to bring in, all right, so seeing Marie Antoinette, your hand is up. You can unmute her mic. Hold on a second, Marie. All right, go ahead, Marie. Ask a question.
Right. I was just saying your there's not a question per se, but your volume is very No, I think I'm on 100 and I'm sort of.
I'm on a 100 as well. I'm probably talking a little soft. You hear me a little better now?
Yeah, I think it's speak up kind of thing.
I apologize. I apologize.
Yeah,
I'll
thank
talk
you.
a
No
little
problem at
bit.
all. No problem at all.
All right.
Hi, Stephanie.
Welcome. All right. So I'm going to bring in the next image to show you all the content aware feature and the patch tool. Right. So I have the couple here. And again, I'm going to use the lasso tool. And I'm going to left click and draw again around them as close as possible. I'm not going to bother with drawing around the shadow because I want to use the patch tool to show you how the patch tool works. Right? As soon as I release, it will turn into a selection. And then I go to edit in the menu and come down to fill. Click the drop down arrow by contents and choose content aware. Right? Make sure the color adaptation is checked. The blend mode is normal. The opacity is 100%. And click OK. And Photoshop will run its algorithm and draw pixels from nearby to fill that selected area. Control D to deselect or Command D. And again, the same thing is occurring here. So I can use the clone stamp tool again. Reduce the brush size by using the open bracket next to P on the keyboard. Hold down Alt, left click to sample. Right, let me carry the opacity up so it'll come back in a little faster. Right, so I carry the opacity back up to 100%. So as I hold Alt and sample, it will reproduce the mountain a little faster. Right. Now, I'm going to get rid of the shadow using the patch tool. So I'm going to click and hold where the content aware move tool was and select the patch tool. Right. And up at the top, I'm going to change the patch option to content aware. Make sure it's on the new selection square. And then I'm going to similar to the lasso tool, left click and draw around the shadow. As soon as I release it, will turn into a selection. Now, when the patch tool is outside of the selected area, it will show up as the patch with one arrowhead. But when I bring it within the selected area, it will show up with the patch and two arrowheads. So I could left click and keep my finger on the left mouse button and drag over an area that I sampled. So this sand area to cover the sand area, right? And then select, deselect. Simple as that. So all that as a precursor to our next page, which will also contain a bit of content aware in it, except using the crop tool. So we're going to get into it. So file open. And we're going into pages 3 and 4. Right. So for this, I have to dislodge my image from the taskbar. So I'm placing my cursor over the words and dragging it, left clicking and dragging it away from the menu bar there. Right. Now we're going to be using this crop tool, which is the third tool in the left column of the toolbar. And normally when you think of cropping an image, you think that you're cropping it to make the image smaller. But because, well, in Photoshop and with the new features that they have for the Photoshop, you could crop an image and actually add to the image. So the first thing we want to make sure is up at the top is on ratio, and we want the delete crop pixels deselected, right? And we want the content aware checkbox checked. I'm placing my cursor to the right or the right face of the image. And I'm going, as soon as I click, the rule of thirds grid appears. So as I drag, I'm paying attention to that first grid. And as it touches the edge of the picture, I'm going to release. And as soon as I release, you'll see these transparent pixels appearing, and that is because I didn't have the delete crop pixels checked, right? Bearing in mind, I have the content aware checked. So as soon as I click on the check mark, Photoshop will run its algorithm. Right? And you see it added extra image to our picture. So all this here was not originally there, right? So before we continue, because we're going to basically make some text appear as though it's in the middle ground. So we're going to make it look as though it's between the mountain and the sky, or in between, right? So we're just going to move this onto the size document that we're going to be placing it in InDesign, because remember, everything going to be laid out in InDesign. So we're going to file new, and we're going to set it to be 20 by 13, right? 300 for the resolution, RGB for the color mode, transparent background, and I'm going to click create, right? And as soon as you click create, the new document will dock next to our existing document. So we could go window, arrange, float all in windows to have our two documents cascade. So I'm going to click back on this one, and with my move tool active, right, because I basically want to move this image, we need the move tool. I'm going to left click and drag and drop this onto the untitled or the new document. And I could X off the previous one and say no to the save any changes. So we left with one new document. And then I'm going to move it down into the bottom left-hand corner. And then I'm going to scale it so that it takes up a little more space in the window. So to scale in Photoshop, it is edit, transform, scale, or Control T or Command T. And remember, in Photoshop, you no longer have to hold Shift if you're scaling an image, right? After you finish scaling, to apply the transformation, because the image will be looking a little blurry, you could either hit the check mark up at the top of the menu, you could press enter on your keyboard, or you can double click within your window to apply the transformation, right? Now, there's a few steps in creating what I spoke about as regards to making the words appear as though it's in the middle ground. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to select and choose one of the new features, which is sky. So select sky. So Photoshop is going to seek out the sky in our image. Right? I made a selection of that, right? Then I'm going to click on the create new layer icon at the bottom of the layer panel. This is the layer panel. This is the create new layer icon. The second to last. Take a screenshot of that for me. Is Isabella on it? Yes, Isabella. I'll add it to the list after, right? Right. So clicking on the create new layer icon. And then what I'm going to do is put this new layer into a group folder. And I'm going to use the shortcut, which is Control G, right? Or Command G if you're using a Mac. And you realize when I close up the folder, you won't see the new layer, but the new layer is actually inside of this folder, right? So while I'm on this group folder, I'm going to hit on the layer mask or add layer mask icon, which is the circle within the rectangle at the bottom of the layer panel. And as soon as I click on it, one, you'll notice that the selection disappeared. And two, you'll notice it created a mask on the group folder layer in the shape of the selected area, right? Then I'm going to actually select this new layer, which is within this group folder. And I'm going to grab my type tool, right? And I did admit that I would use the impact. I unmute Renisha for me. Hi, Renisha.
Hi, sir. What is the purpose of the grouping the layers right now that you're doing? Like,
I didn't actually group the layer. I put that new layer into a group folder, right? Why I had to create a group folder is because I only want the effect that I'm going to do to affect, not to be redundant, this particular area on the image. And that's what I was talking about. I'm trying to set up the layers so that the words would fall behind the mountains, but in front of the sky. So in the middle ground. So that's how come that's where the mask comes in. So that's why I had to select the sky, right? In order to tell the programmer, hey, this is the area that I'm working with. But because it is a masking function, and if you realize in my layer stack, the layer 2 is the actual layer with the mountains and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So the new layer that is created in between the selection on the mask and the picture with the mountain, that's would make it appear as though the words in the middle ground. So just a little trick.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Right? So I'm grabbing my type tool. I have it set to impact, which I did say that I would use a lot. And I am just going to use 30 to start with, making sure it's aligned left. And I'm leaving the font color as white. So this square up here with color has to do with the color for my font. So if I click in it, I could bring up the color picker, and you would see that next to the color picker here, it says text color. But as I said, I just want to leave it as white. And then I'm going to click around here in the image. And I'm just going to type the word amazing in caps. Click on my move tool, and I'm doing the shortcut for scale, Control T. And scaling it out. And as you see, as I scale it, it appears as though it is behind the mountain, but in front of the sky, right? So if you check my layer panel and the stacking order, you realize that it kind of makes sense. So it's in front of it's behind the mountains, but it's in front of the sky area, right? Which was blocked out using masking on the group folder, right? So now we're going to get into a little bit more of the layer style. So just going to add a little drop shadow. So we're going to click on FX down at the bottom of the layer panel. Click on drop shadow. And the layer style panel will come up with the drop shadow option already selected. And you'll know that because the drop shadow functions would be active on the right-hand side. And I just want to show you something. If I click in the color box for the drop shadow, right? So it says drop shadow, and I move my cursor out, an eyedropper will appear. So that means it will allow me to sample colors from within the image itself to act as my drop shadow, right? So I'll use a shade of brown, and I'm just going to increase the distance. And spread a little bit on the sides. Right? Everything else I'll leave in as default. And I'm just going to click OK. Right? So I'm saving this as pages 3 and 4 spread. So file save as. Pages 3 and 4 spread. Photoshop file, and then file export. Export as. And saving it as a JPEG. Right, JPEG. Right? Okay. So next, I'm going to demonstrate masking again, but in a different context. We're going to make something look as though it's popping up like a pop-up, like a storybook, but it's obviously this is a flat two-dimensional surface, the screen that we're on. But we're going to make a rhino pop up out of a frame, right? Using masking and the select subject again, right? I'm also going to show you all the note tool, because for these steps, I don't always remember it often. So it is an opportunity for me to talk to you all about how the note tool functions. So I'll open up the file that I did already and copy the notes, and then I'll open the image. And so the image, and this is the note file. So I'm just going to copy the notes. Right. Right. So the note tool is found in the fourth cluster of tools in the left column of the toolbar. Normally you would see the eyedropper tool present. Right. So when you click and hold, because remember, once you see that arrow to the bottom right-hand corner of a tool, it means you have other tools in the cluster. So I click and hold, and I choose the note tool. And I just click anywhere within the document, and the note tool panel comes up. And you could write a note, right? Now, obviously, I had written out what I needed to write out already, right? Now, the good thing about the note tool is that it is non-printable. So even though it's showing up there on your document, if you were to send this image to print as is, this would not show up on your print, right? This comes in handy now. Granted, obviously, the technology, you could just call somebody or send them a voice note or WhatsApp or whatever, right? But it comes in handy, like if you have specific instructions and you and somebody sharing the file, working on the file together, you could just type something that you might want to remember, or something that you might want them to do when you send them the file in the note, the sticky note, right? And then you could always right click on it and choose delete note when you finish, right? So I'm going to be following my instructions, right? So the first thing I said is to duplicate the image twice. So to duplicate the image is Control J or Command J. So let's press Command or Control J twice. So in my layer panel, I have 3 layers, right? And then I want to create a new layer in between the duplicated layers. So in order for me to do that, I need to select the layer 1 and then click on the create new layer icon. So the new layer got created in between these 2 layers, right? And then I said to select the background layer and fill it with black. So I select the background layer in the layer panel, and then I could press Control A or Command A, which is the shortcut for select all, and the marginans or the selection comes up around the entire image. And then I could go edit, fill, edit in the menu, fill, change the contents to, well, in this case, black is my background color, or I could just choose black and make sure the mode is normal, the opacity is 100, and click OK. And you notice, well, the image didn't turn black, and that's again because of the stacking order. I spoke to you all about tracing paper and stuff like that, right? And stacking order, how important it is. So right now the background is below everything in the stack. But if you look at the thumbnail, you'll see that the thumbnail is black, right? And then I need to deselect. So select, deselect. But if I turn off the visibility, which is the eyes to the left of the thumbnails, you'll see that the background is black. So turning back on the visibility for everything, right? Then I said to select the new layer and rename it frame. So this was the new layer that I created. So to rename a layer, you just double click on the words and rename it. Okay. And then I said to hide the visibility of the top layer. So I just took off the visibility, right? I stayed on the frame layer, but I took off the visibility of the top layer. Then I said to go to the rectangular marquee tool and drag out a rectangular marquee where I want the subject to pop out. Because remember, as I said, that we going to make it look as though the rhino is jumping out of a frame, right? So the rectangular marquee tool is the first tool in the right column. And in that cluster, you have the elliptical marquee, the single row marquee, and the single column using the rectangular marquee. So just going to just drag it over the entire rhino more or less, because I know I could scale it and stuff after, which I have to, right? Then I said to go to edit stroke and set the width and color and choose inside, right? So edit stroke, right? I'll set the width to 24 pixels. I'm leaving the color as white, and I said to choose inside, so it's on inside already. Blend mode normal, opacity 100. So that's width 24, color leaving it as white, location inside. Click OK, right? And then deselect the selection. So Control D or select deselect in the menu. Next, I'm going to go to edit, transform, and choose perspective, right? And I'm going to just place it by the top left-hand corner of the frame and move it inward a little bit. And then I'll right-click and choose scale and bring this down a little bit. And right-click again and choose perspective again. Push the bottom part out. Right-click, scale, bring this down. Right-click, perspective. Push this out a little bit. Push this out a little bit too. Because in essence, we want the bottom of the feet to be inside the frame, right? Hit the check mark, or you could press enter, or you could double click within the image, right? Next, I said to control click on the thumbnail for the frame layer and then go to select inverse. So this is the thumbnail for the frame. So I'm going to hold down control and left click on the thumbnail. So the marching hands come up on the inside and outside of the frame. Then I said, go to select in the menu and choose inverse. Then you're going to press Q on your keyboard, which is the quick mask function. So you'll notice that your frame itself turned pink, right? Then I'm going to go to the paint bucket tool, and I have black set up as my foreground color. And I'm just going to click anywhere outside of the mask. So all this pink area here is basically masked out. So just a little masking explanation, right? So Photoshop is like maths and art kind of having in a marriage, right? So masking in the art world, we have something called masking fluid, which is coincidentally a pink fluid as well. And what it does is allow the artist to use the paintbrush in the masking fluid to paint over an area that the artist doesn't want to be affected by paint, right? Or whatever application the artist is using. So it's a similar kind of explanation for masking in Photoshop. So I don't want anything to happen in this particular area right now, right? Then I said to click on layer 1 and add, and click the add layer mask icon, which is this one. But before that, right, I have to press Q again. Right, so the selection came up only on the inside of the frame. Now we're going to click on layer 1 and click on the add layer mask icon. So it will temporarily hide our rhino, and that is because our layer 1, the visibility of it is not there. So I need to turn the visibility back on and select the layer. And then I'm going to go to select in the menu and choose subject. Okay, so just doing a quick check around the image to see if all the vital parts were chosen. Right, so I have a little discrepancy here, so I'll show you all how to fix that up, right? So I zoomed in, Control plus, and I'm going to grab the quick selection tool, and I want it on the add to selection brush, right? And like I mentioned last week, all the tools kind of function the same way like the brush tool. So to increase the brush size or the size of the quick selection tool would be the close bracket next to the P. To make it smaller is the open bracket next to the P. Now, I want some more of the rhino's foot selected. So that's why I have it on the add to selection brush. So I'm just going to left click and push the selection out a little bit. Right, left click and push the selection. Right, so it went a little too far, right? So I don't want this area in between here selected. So instead of clicking on the subtract from selection brush, what I could do is just hold down Alt on the keyboard, and you'll notice that it went to the subtract from selection brush automatically. So that way, as soon as I let go Alt on the keyboard, it will automatically jump back to the add to selection brush, right? So holding down Alt and just clicking in the space. Right. I want the foot there, but I don't want the space here. So I'm just going to reduce the brush size again with the open bracket next to P. Hold down Alt and make the selection there. Take my finger off Alt so I could take in a little bit more of the rhino's foot on this side here. Right? Control minus to zoom out and just do a little quick double check. Right. Looking all right. Now to click on the add layer mask icon again for this top layer. And we have our pop-up of our rhino. So we're going to move this onto a 4x6" document because we're going to use this to do a text wrap in InDesign a little later on. So we're going to go File, New, and change this to 4 for the width and 6 for the height. And click Create. Placing my cursor over the untitled one and dragging it away. Click back on this image. And I'm going to hold Shift and click on layer 1. I don't really want the black background. I just want the standalone rhino. So I'm just going to hold Shift and drag and drop. So that my rhino will fall in the middle. Then the X off previous one and say no to save any changes. Control T or edit transform scale. Right? Move it around until we get a corner. And I do want to scale all 4 corners at the same time this time. So I'll just hold on Alt and scale from a corner. Right? And enter to apply the transformation. Right? So in the layer panel, you'll notice that only the layers that were selected. I remember to select multiple layers, you just have to hold on Shift. Right? I'm going to save this as only a Photoshop file because I explained that just now. It's page 5 for text wrap. Right? And the reason why I would want to save it only as a Photoshop file is because I want to maintain the transparent background. Because when I place this file in InDesign, I want to do the text wrap, as I said, and I want the words to wrap, basically wrap around the rhino, right? But if I were to save this as a JPEG, it would put back a white background behind this. Now we have uses for having a white background. So there are a few ways you could do text wraps. So you could do text wraps around a bounding box itself, which I will show you all later on. But for this one, I want us to do detect the edges with the text wrap, right? Okay. Right. So just give me a second. I'm just going to share a different screen. Right, because we're going to be getting into Illustrator now. So just now in Photoshop, for the last 3 classes, we've been looking at masking, right? In this class, well, in this particular page, quote unquote, you're going to be looking at clipping mask, which is something similar to masking, but it's done in Illustrator, right? The major difference is that you wouldn't see that white, actually you do in your transparency panel, but you won't see the white mask showing up in your layer panel, right? So we're going to go File, New, and we're going to set up the 7.38 and 9.78 artboard, right? Because those are the dimensions for the margins in InDesign. Because remember, as I said at the beginning of class, everything that we're going to be creating, we'll be creating it to the dimensions of the margin, right? To bring something into Illustrator onto your artboard as File, Place. So we're going to File, Place. Happily now. Okay. Right, File, Place. So, right, I'm going to look. Okay. I put direct messages on. Right. Going into my today folder. Page 6. Right, image for clip and mask. Right. As soon as I click and release it, remember, as I mentioned with the apple that we did for practice, as soon as you place something in Illustrator, especially if you intend to use it as part of your artwork, you should embed it. So we go across to the properties panel on your right-hand side and click embed. That will get rid of the blue X that came up, right? Holding Shift and Alt, because you need to hold Shift and Alt in Illustrator. Right? And I'm going to try to draw around this with the pen tool as quickly as possible, right? So again, to draw around something, I would need only a stroke color. So just keeping it simple, I'm just going to toggle the white fill square into the stroke square. And I'm going to grab my pen tool and Control+ to zoom in a little bit. Right, I'm not obviously going to be paying too much attention to all the fine hairs and stuff like that, as you would with Photoshop, right? So remember, your first point is always 1 point. It's never a click and drag. And I'm going to look for another area on the image. Click. Edit, undo, or Control Z. Now in Illustrator, you could Control Z as many times as you have to. But in Photoshop, now in these latest versions, they only allow you 1 Control Z. So it's recommended that you just do the edit step backward in Photoshop one time rather than trying to do the Control C and then the Alt Control Z, because it will lead you nowhere. So just edit step backward to undo in Photoshop, or edit undo in Illustrator, or you could do the Control Z as many times as you need to in Illustrator. Right? Spacebar to activate my hand tool rather than having to click and click. So as soon as I hold the spacebar, the hand tool will come up. As soon as I let it go, it will present my pen tool once again. Trying to do this as quickly as possible, but still as accurately as possible. Because remember, as I mentioned, however you use your pen tool is how the image will appear after you cut it out, right? And the reason why this image could work as regards to being an image that you could cut out in Illustrator is because there aren't any spaces like in between the arms and the side of the body. But if you had spaces in between the arm and the sides of the body, or in between the legs and stuff like that, then the better program to cut that out would have been Photoshop, because in Photoshop, well, as you saw numerous times, you have the select subject function, but the pen tool functions a little differently in Photoshop as regards to being able to cut out something. You have the exclude part option, which you don't have in Illustrator. In Illustrator, you just have the straight up make a part around something and use the clip and mask function to crop it out. Not really worrying with the shadow on your toes either. My mouse is betraying me. All right. You're always looking for the anchor point in between the two handlebars to get rid of that protruding handlebar, especially once you left click and drag and bring out the handlebars, right? Almost finished. As I said, I'm not worrying about all the little strands and stuff like that. Just dealing with the basic shape of the lady. Right. Control 0 and selection tool. And I could do Control A, which is the shortcut for select all, because I didn't lock the original image. So right now with the Control A or select all, the image as well as the outline for the girl is selected. So I'm going to Object, come down to Clip and Mask, and choose Make. And it will crop the background out, right? And I'm going to get into discussing a little bit about blend modes. So blend modes in layman's terms, and don't panic. I will send you all Word documents on what is blend modes, color modes, the tools and stuff like that, right? But don't panic. Don't panic. You will still get that, right? So blend modes in layman's terms is Illustrator or Photoshop, because both programs have blend modes. In layman's terms, how a layer, or in this instance, because we're not going to be using layers because Illustrator is not layer specific, but how images or shapes can interplay with each other based on the colors, the respective colors on the images. So in this case, the lady had on her blue jeans, white top, kind of peach skin, and we're going to place a red rectangle over her. But both the image and the rectangle that we're going to place are going to have different blend modes. So to change blend modes in Illustrator, you have to go to the transparency panel. So I have my transparency panel already docked on the right-hand side. But I think I mentioned it in like the first or the second class. Any tool or panel that you looking for will be in window, and you could choose what it is you're looking for. Do blend modes work the same as the blend modes and art programs? Yeah, I believe when you say art programs, you mean like Canva and stuff like that? Right, so changing the lady's blend mode from normal to lighten. I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool, click once in the open area. I know that the size of the artboard is 7.38 by 9.78. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to click on my swatches panel and change that to red, and click back on the transparency panel and change this to, I think I'll do the other way around. So I'll change the rectangle to lighten and the lady to darken, right? And then I'm going to move the rectangle to cover the entire artboard. So if I left the blend modes as is, so I mean if I left the rectangle as normal for the blend mode and the lady as normal for the blend mode, then you would not see the lady through the rectangles. It's only because I changed the blend mode, it's allowing for the interplay of color and light and stuff like that to kind of mismatch with each other, right? Okay. Holding on the space bar to move the artboard off to the left a little bit. We're going to create a header for this page, and going to show you like how to do like a cartoon font kind of thing, right? Using the Pathfinder panel and the offset path function, right? So I'm gonna grab the type tool, and yes, we're going to use impact. So on the properties panel on the right, changing the Myriad Pro to impact, right? Now changing the size to 80, right? And I click once in the open area or the pasteboard area, and I'm just gonna type a word, and we could call it cartoon. Right? Really wouldn't matter what you call it. It's just to show you what it does, right? So grabbing the selection tool, and the first thing I'm going to do is turn this into outline. So don't know if you all remember from last week, but to create outlines for your text, you could either go to type in the menu and choose create outlines, or you could right click once you are on the selection tool, you can right click and choose create outlines. And remember that basically changes your text into a shape. So it will no longer be editable as text, right? You can't go in there with the type tool and try to put in a letter and stuff like that anymore, right? So I just want to take this opportunity now before we get a little further to show you all the liquify tools. So now, if you want extra tools in Illustrator, you have to click on these three dots, right? And I'm looking for my liquify tools here, right? So we have the warp tool, the twirl tool, pucker, bloat, scallop, crystallize, wrinkle, right? And I think I'll just use the crystallize, right? Now, to adjust the size of the circle that comes up, because obviously you may not want such a big circle. If you hold on Alt and left click and start to drag your mouse, and then keep a finger on Shift after, it will allow you to adjust the size, right? Yes. Changing the appearance of it a little bit, right? Then I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to select this one, edit, copy, edit, paste in front. Use my up arrow key because I'm on my selection tool. I could use my up arrow key to nudge the copy upward. And I'm going to use the shortcut Control C to copy, Control F to paste in front, the up arrow key on the keyboard, Control C to copy, Control F to paste in front again, and the up arrow key on the keyboard. Right? So the first one I'm going to affect is this one at the bottom here. This is the one that I'm going to use the offset part on. So what the offset part does is basically expand the appearance or the look of the shape, right? So that's object, path, offset path, object path, offset path, right? And once your preview is on, you can kind of get an idea how it will look. So this is kind of large, so I'll try 0.03, 0.4. Hit preview again. All right, so that's not looking too bad. So it's kind of a little wider. That could work for me. Well, let me try 0.5. Yeah, 0.5. Click OK. Right? For this one, I'm going to use a dark color. For this one, I'll use a light color. And for this one, I will invert it. So I'll hit the toggle arrows here to swap the black fill square in the black fill square color into the stroke square. but I want a white color. So I'll bring the stroke square to overlap the fill square by clicking on it. Now choose white. I'll leave the size as 1 point for now. Right? Now I'm going to, let's see, what time? Class started at 2 o'clock. Then started, well, Miss George had a little words to say, so we didn't start until like about 2:15, 2:10 kind of thing. Right? So with the darker color active, I'm going to use my pen tool. And I'm just going to make a path. Right, so 1 point, 2 point, click, click, click. Grab my selection tool and hold down shift and click on the lighter colored one, right? And then I'm going to go to my Pathfinder panel, which is docked on the right-hand side already. Remember, if yours is not, you go window and choose Pathfinder. And I'm going to use trim, the second option in the bottom row of the Pathfinder. And when I click trim, it will look as though nothing happened. So I need to, because what I need to do is ungroup. So I go to object in the menu and choose ungroup. And then I can click anywhere on the outside to deselect. And then click on the random shape and press delete. And you'll see that it cut half of my shape. Now, because I did the ungroup, everything would be separate, right? But I want this together. So I'll just left click in the open area and drag a selection to just touch these particular shapes. And then go back to object and choose group. And then now I'm going to stack everything. So stacking this on top, stacking this on top of this. You can nudge it around a little bit with the once you're on the selection tool, you can nudge stuff around with the arrow keys on the keyboard. All right. Then I'll drag a selection over everything and go object group and move this onto the artboard. All right. Nisha.
To be clear.
Good afternoon. So I reached a little late, right? But I'm trying to catch up at the same time with everything that you're doing. And I would like to ask you, what app is this you're using?
This is Illustrator, but you could just follow along because remember you always get the recording, so you could always refer to the recording when you're looking on it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So next, I want to show you how to do the rotate function, right? So to do that, I'm going to be using the ellipse tool. So the ellipse tool will be docked with your rectangle tool. The shortcut is L, right? And I'll use green. Now, these colors that I'm using is just, you don't have to do this when use these colors when you're trying it, right? Clicking once in the open area to bring up the ellipse tool dialog box, and I plug in 4x4 for the height and width, and grab my selection tool, and I'm going to duplicate this circle. So I'm going to hold down Alt, left click and start to drag to the right. Place a finger on Shift to keep it in line. And I'm paying attention to when I see intersect, right? Then I'm going to drag a selection over the two circles and go back to the Pathfinder panel and choose intersect. So I get kind of like a leaf. Now I'm going to go to the rotate tool, which is the fourth tool in the right column of the toolbar. Double click on it to bring up the rotate tool dialog box. For the angle, I'm going to set it to 15 degrees. And instead of clicking OK, I will click copy. Right? So it made a copy. And I'm going to duplicate this right around by pressing Control or Command D. I'm going to drag a selection over it. Again, using the selection tool, the black arrow. Going back to the Pathfinder, and I will choose Exclude, which is the last option in the top row. Then I will do Shift X, which is the shortcut for toggling between the fill square and the stroke square, right? And just a little trick, again, I just want half of this. So I will use the line segment tool, which is docked with the shape tools. I'm going to grab the line segment tool here. And right, draw out a line, drag a selection over the line as well as my shape. Grab the Pathfinder, and I'm going to choose Divide. And right click and choose Ungroup. And deselect and drag a selection over the top part and delete the top part. And then drag a selection over everything again. And I can either go Object Group or right click and choose Group. Hi, Patrice.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. I don't know if it's me alone, right? But as I would have said to you that I am lost, I'm even more lost so because I think from the first class, I don't know if I missed it, but I don't even know what is Adobe Illustrator, what it is used for. I don't know if that was explained. And now you are going into these things. It's just confusing me.
You look at the recordings?
Yes, I do.
And you didn't, well, I explained for Cleo, and I remember Cleo asked about it, what's the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign. Adobe is just the broad name. But just bear me like 15 more minutes. It should take me to run through this, and I will try to explain it again, what was the purpose of the different programs and stuff like that. Yeah? All right. So, holding on the space bar, and I'm going to move this onto the artboard and scale it. And send it to the back. So to send something to the back, it's Object Arrange, Center Back. And the color will change again because remember we changed the color of the red rectangle, right? I'm going to show you all the symbol sprayer tool. Right, so the symbol sprayer tool will be found by clicking on the three dots and scrolling up, and it will be here in the drawer section, the symbol sprayer. Now the symbol sprayer works in tangent with the symbol panel, right? I have my symbol panel out already, but again, you could always find all your panels on the window drop down, right? Window, and you can choose whichever panels you want to choose. The menu here, you can click on it and choose Open Symbol Library, and you're just going to choose Retro, right? And we're going to choose the lava lamps. As soon as I click on it in the Retro panel, it will appear in the symbol panel. And it's going to X off that panel, right? And I'm just going to spray out a few symbols and then go through the options with the symbol sprayer. So this one is a shifter scruncher, sizer, spinner, stainer, screener, and style, right? Now, if you want to get rid of an instance, so the symbol that comes out is actually called an instance. If you want to get rid of an instance, you just hold down Alt and left click over the instance that you want to get rid of, right? So we actually do just want two. So it makes life a little easier for me. So I'm going to use the shifter to shift my instance around. And the scruncher would bring a symbol together, right? Sizer by default will make a symbol bigger. If you hold down Alt and click on it, it will make a symbol smaller. The spinner is to rotate your symbol, right? The stainer works in tangent with your swatches. So whatever fill square swatch you have, when you click on the instance, it will change it to that color. The screener by default will make a symbol a little transparent, but if you want to bring back the opacity of it, you just hold down Alt and click on it, right? And the styler works in tangent with the graphic style panel. So I don't have that up, so let me just bring it out. So window, graphic style, right? And whatever graphic style you have here, choose and you click on your symbol and it will apply it to your symbol, right? We're to copy this and duplicate it. So Control C to copy and Control F to paste in front. And I'm going to go to Object, Transform, Reflect. And yes, I want it on the vertical option. And I'm just going to click OK and drag the copy onto the other side, right? I'm going to save this as page 6 and I'm going to talk a little bit, right? So File, Save As. Click OK. File, Export, Export as JPEG. Remember to check the Use Artboard checkbox. You always make sure the quality is all the way up and your resolution is high once it's a small document. All right. So Adobe is the name of the software. The latest version is called Adobe Creative Suite, right? Or CC Creative Cloud, right? Creative Cloud. Creative Suite was before Creative Cloud. I think they've reached Creative Cloud 2022, 2023 for some versions of the software, right? Now, what I'm trying to do in this program is teach you all the majority of the tools and filters. Now, the programs themselves are very vast, right? I obviously would not be able to teach you all everything in 2 hours for 10 weeks, right? So my intention is to teach you all the majority of things, to be able to teach you all how to fish. So that way, if it is, you want to do anything like extraordinary, you'll be able to follow on any YouTube video that you click on online, right? So to kind of tack back a little bit to when I was trying to explain to Cleo last week, for example, with the logo, I explained to Cleo about the logo, but things like flyers and stuff like that. Flyers you could do in Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign. It's just that Photoshop is specific to photo editing. Illustrator is specific to drawing, right? And InDesign is specific to layout. Now, you can combine the three, right? But you just have to understand the parameters of each. As I explained, if it is you create something in Illustrator, you could scale it, put it on different dimension artboards, and it won't run into any problems. However, if you place a JPEG image onto at a particular size onto a document, a small document, let's say, and you try to scale that afterwards onto a larger size document, you'll run into problems because the image will become blurry or pixelated, right? That's if you put a JPEG image onto Illustrator, but if you create onto Illustrator artboard, but if you create everything from scratch in Illustrator, you could scale from now until infinity and won't run into any problems. If you create something in Photoshop, you have to create it to the dimensions that you know that you're going to leave it as. Because if you try to scale it afterwards, it's going to become jaggy or pixelated, right? InDesign is specifically for layout. You could do a business card, you could do a flyer, you could do a poster in InDesign. The only thing is you can't create from scratch in InDesign. You'd have to place images that you would have sourced from the internet into InDesign to create your artwork, right? You will know, all right. In the three, you could kind of do similar things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the program for that. So for example, I'm going to show you how to do a GIF animation in Photoshop. Now, technically, you could do animation in Illustrator or in InDesign, but the quality wouldn't be as good as if you do it in, let's say, After Effects or Premiere Pro, right? Because those are the programs for video editing or animation. Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign is not really for that, right? I hope I answered your question, Patricia, because I really don't want you to be too lost or anybody else who feeling that they lost. I just asking you to stick it out, right? Hopefully, admin will get the software and I'll be able to email it to you all later so I can start to practice and stuff like that, right? But I reiterate, my intention is to teach you all how to fish. So I'm trying to teach you all how the tools work, what the tools do, right? And once you have a general idea, you could go on YouTube and so I sent you all an email about the stuff that we'll be covering, the majority of things that we'll be covering. And as we go through each day as we come, as I go through the pages that are created, I'm going to tell you what we're doing, right? What I'll try to input is why you might want to do this, right? So as I said last week and I said again today, the reason why we're doing the 7.38 by 9.78 dimensions all the time is because I know that we're going to be laying this out in InDesign on a magazine, right? And I told you all the magazine dimensions is 8.38 by 10.78. But when we created the pages in InDesign, it came up with a purple inner border, which is the margin, right? And remember, we did page numbering. So we don't want whatever we designed to cover the page numbering. So that's why we're creating everything to fit within that purple margin, right? And as I go along, I will try to demonstrate the similarities and the differences. So as I shared with you all in Illustrator and InDesign, you have a fill square and a stroke square, whereas in Photoshop, you have a foreground color and a background color. Your save tool is your selection tool in Illustrator and InDesign, whereas in Photoshop is your move tool, meaning all it will do is allow you to select something or move something. And you always want to go back to that tool, especially after having used the brush tool or the pen tool and stuff like that, because you don't want to accidentally put some kind of element on your artboard or on your document or on your page and you forget that you did that. try to save something and you get a error prompt, right? But all I'm asking is for you all to stick it out, right? This is just the third day. We have 7 more days, right? And as I mentioned last week, you will be getting little activities to do in class, right? Where you can, I'll open up the mic so that you can ask questions as you'll try to do it, right? But not now, not today, right? When you'll get the activities or the quizzes to do, right? So, as I said, I should get the software from admin, well, the IT department from admin. So you can look out for that either later today or tomorrow, please God, right? And I will send you all the images for Wednesday, tomorrow. And I will start to send you all some Word documents tomorrow, please God, right? But just stick it out and review the videos. Review the videos. And I know it might be a little difficult with all the software where you can't practice, because trust me, with these programs, you have to practice it, or else you'll forget, right? Yeah, Khadijah.
Hi, I was just wondering, are we going to also learn like the principles of graphic design and stuff? Because learning how to do it is one thing, but in terms of where to put pictures and the proportions that things are supposed to be.
Yeah, have documents and that are going to give you. Don't panic. I understand what you mean by is different as regards to layout and stuff like that, and understanding the use of the software. So I will give you all handouts on that. This is my first class. Crystal, you need to contact community development for them to send you the videos that you would have missed. Right, Anastasia?
Yeah, hi, it is. I was just wondering, like, do you have a graphic design cheat sheets or key sheets with
That's
all this jargon and stuff? Because it's kind of difficult when you're using the jargon and someone is now starting and have no clue. Even if you explain it before, we still won't know it one time because we don't have the programs or nothing.
I know that's why I'll keep repeating things. But yes, I have a cheat sheet as regards to the tools and stuff like that. But as I use things, I will just repeat myself. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
But still, the repeating thing not really gonna help if I still don't know what it is. So if you say masking and I do originally don't know what masking is and you're continuously saying masking, I ain't gonna know what it is. So I don't know if you could send me cheat sheet as soon as possible so I could read it over while I'm watching the recordings or something.
Or you could just go on YouTube and type in, masking in Photoshop. What is masking in Photoshop?
All right, sir, no problem. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else want to ask any questions? Yeah, Maria.
So what about LMS?
Now, but as you guys say LMS, the recordings you're talking about? Maria?
So the LMS platform where you usually go in and click the class that you finish and that stuff.
That you had to talk with community development. You Anna?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to find out if well, this is my first class, right? Is there a WhatsApp group?
I believe the students created that.
Sorry?
I believe the students created that.
All right, is there a way that I can be added or to contact to be added to the group?
Honestly, don't know who in charge of the WhatsApp group, because I'm not in the WhatsApp group.
All right, no problem.
All right. Yeah, Shania.
Hi, sir.
Mhm.
Well, I had a question before that I was gonna ask, but since you did the whole taking, I can't remember the terms, but taking out this woman out of the picture that she wasn't before, would you more recommend this one for like taking out subjects out of pictures that are similar in color?
No,
You understand what I mean?
the function itself,
Because
the clipping mask function.
yeah, because remember the next one that is do it for you, but I know sometimes it is have difficulties with those that doing it for you. If let's say somebody have one brown in a picture and then the background is like brown as
Right.
well.
Yeah, close to each other, right? That's a very good question. Well, yes and no. So as I mentioned earlier, right, the clipping mask function would work in Illustrator if you see, like with this lady, she doesn't have any spaces in between her arm and her side or her legs and stuff like that, right? So it was a straight up make a path around her. So that's how come you get away with using the clipping mask function here. But if she had spaces in between her arms and her side and stuff like that, then you would have to use the pen tool in Photoshop. So first thing, Wednesday, I will demonstrate that. Anybody else? I get this by seven. Well, you have the video recordings to look over. And you could follow it step by step at your leisure. Yeah, Crystal.
Hi, good afternoon. So my question, how do we get the recordings from class?
It is normally emailed to you from community development, sends it to you.
Okay, because I know this was my first class, but I haven't gotten any.
Check your spam folder. Check your spam.
No problem.
Yeah. Any more questions? All right, so if nobody else has any questions, I'll see you all on Wednesday. As I said, hopefully I'll be able to send you all the software either later today or tomorrow once admin sends it to me. All right. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Bye, sir.
Bye.